Hello and welcome to today's webinar adapting to the 2021 European Right to Repair Initiative for Electrical and Electronic Products. My name is Claire Forestier and I'm your host today. I've been brought in by HQTS, who are sponsoring today's event. Now, HQTS have been providing quality assurance services around the world for more than 25 years. They're headquartered in Asia, but with locations across the globe, and HQTS provides supply chain quality solutions for commercial consumer goods, as well as testing services, inspections, audits and certifications. And they also take care of the production process management, the production monitoring, training, and they offer consulting to their clients across a huge number of verticals. They do a lot of things. Now we've got a lot to do today, so let's get started. And I'd like to introduce you to our very first guest. Our first guest is Ernestus Odivras. I think I've said that right, but if not, he will correct us, who is the program manager of ECOS. Hello, Ernestus. Good to see you. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm having a bit of an issue turning on my camera, but in any
we
case,
all are, don't worry.
In case, indeed, hello to everyone. I am a program manager in the climate and energy team at ECOS, where I focus on, here we go, I think the camera seems to work
Yay.
now, where I focus on product policy and standards, predominantly in the EU, but also internationally. I'll be talking to you about the latest policy developments and very glad to be part of the panel.
Lovely, thank you very much. So before we hear from Ernestus, though, we've got three more guests to meet. So our second speaker is Hugo Valori, who's the co-founder and policy lead of the Restart project. Hi, Hugo. And you're muted, so do turn that on.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be with you all. So my focus is bringing the perspective and the voice of civil society to these conversations. So what do people want to see? What frustrations we have? And we'll be talking about this alongside the opportunities and the learnings from the wave of interest on right to repair. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant, thank you. So we'll hear more from you later. Our third speaker today is Robert Alexander, who's the CEO of Esafe and Localite. I'm not going to say all the E's at the beginning and the end there. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Claire. Locality, that is. So just to let you know.
Locality. I should check that. Yes.
But yes, we're going to be talking about the challenges from a safety point of view of repairing any electrical appliance. We particularly specialise in white goods. We've got a community arm to our model and lots of solutions and challenges for manufacturers that need to overcome if they're going to get widespread buy-in to the right to repair.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. So we will be hearing from Robert shortly, and before that we are going to hear from Damian Smith, who joins us now. He's the CEO of EcoDesk. So tell us, Damian, what's your background in this?
Morning, Claire. Hello, everyone. So my background, I'm a qualified environmental auditor. Back in 2013, joined this firm EcoDesk and spent the last 8 years working in supply chain, predominantly looking at all environmental factors, but really focusing on performance. So my key themes today really are to look at the compliance aspects of the legislation and regulation, but also then talk about how we move beyond that and unlock opportunities across the supply chain.
Lovely. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about today, as you can tell. So we're going to get started very soon, and we're then going to move on, after we've heard from everybody, into a quick Q&A session with the guys who are talking to us today. And then also it's an opportunity for you, the audience, to send in any questions that you may have on the Q&A function here on Zoom. And if you're not familiar with it, you just click onto Ask Your Question, and if someone else has already asked it, you can upvote. If you don't get all the questions answered today in the webinar, don't worry, we're going to do our best to get the answers to you and send them on to you. So please put your company name and email in the chat so HQTS can send it on to you. So first up is Ernestus, and rest of us will switch our cameras and microphones off now and leave you alone on the stage, so to speak. Take it away, Ernestus.
Sounds very good. Thank you. I'll just try to share my screen. If you give me a second. here we go. You should see my slides now, I suppose. Right. Hello, everyone, again. So as said earlier, my name is Ernesto Soldiervas, and I work for ECOS. In today's presentation, I'm going to try and say a few words about why we're talking about right to repair today, why it is a pressing priority. I'm going to say a few words about latest policy developments that we've seen happening in Europe and that have been widely reported on in the media, and also say a few words about what can be expected to happen on this priority issue in the coming months and years. But before I begin, perhaps a quick word about ECOS. So I work for the Environmental Coalition on Standards, as it was said earlier, which is an environmental NGO bringing together over 50 member organizations from across Europe and beyond. We advocate for ambitious technical policies and standards in Europe and globally in order to reduce our footprint on the planet and our climate impact. We don't work alone. We also are part of a number of coalitions of organizations, and two of them in particular we are happy to co-lead. One of them is a coalition of environmental actors called Right to Repair in Europe. It's a campaign that was launched in 2019 and brings together well over 40 organization actors and different types of organizations, from environmental NGOs through to community repairers to self-repair initiatives and repair businesses, and also the Cool Products campaign, which we've launched well over a decade ago now, which is a campaign bringing together environmental NGOs to advocate for ambitious product policy in Europe. So before I delve into latest policy developments, allow me to say a few words about right to repair and why precisely we're talking about it today. And the first and obvious reason, I suppose, is the fact that our today's consumption patterns are, by and large, very much unsustainable. So if we look at the demand of material that we require in the EU to produce all the goods and services that we consume, we know that the demand of material in the EU is expected to double between 2010 and 2030. And only about 12% of the material that we use to produce all the goods today come from recycled materials. And that despite record recycling rates that we have in Europe. The consumption of electric and electronic goods is a particular issue in this regard, since e-waste happens to be the fastest growing waste stream in the world, with growth rates that are 3 times faster than the world's population. In Europe, we produce nearly 60 kilograms of e-waste per person per year, and only less than 40% of that is then collected for recycling, which of course means a tremendous amount of material being lost after single use, but also significant impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems, chemical pollution, as well as social impacts on communities where a lot of these materials are sourced. The consumption of electrical and electronic goods not only has impacts on our use of materials, but also weighs heavily on the climate too. We know that by 2040, our use and production of electronic products is expected to be responsible for some 14% of total greenhouse gas emissions. To put that into perspective, that is 1.5 times more than the global transport sector. And addressing all that means looking at product design and thinking about how we can make products to be more sustainable, last longer. And as part of that, of course, we need to look at how to make them easier to repair at times when they do break. We know that 80% of a product's environmental impact is determined at the design stage. So looking at how to make them last longer and be easier to repair is a key strategy in this regard. And we know that consumers are with us too. because a recent Eurobarometer survey has shown that 77% of EU citizens do prefer to repair their goods rather than buy new ones. So it comes as no surprise that there is some political momentum to address this issue. And as I said, there has been quite a lot of media coverage on the latest developments related to right to repair, which has with some specific requirements that have been adopted in 2019 in the EU and have recently come into force. Before I say more about what those requirements entail precisely, allow me to perhaps quickly remind to those listeners who are perhaps unfamiliar with the eco-design framework in the EU. It is a policy framework which establishes product-specific minimum sustainability requirements for products in order for them to be placed on the EU market, which means that progressively these, and by being progressively made more and more ambitious, these requirements push off the most wasteful products of the EU market. A very good example of that is, for example, the energy guzzling incandescent light bulbs that we have progressively seen taken off the market in the EU. These minimum requirements, if you will, are coupled with what is known as the energy label in Europe. It's a mandatory label that is placed on a selected group of products, which displays information on the energy efficiency and other sustainability performance aspects of products, and thereby pushes consumers towards best performing products. So the two kind of work in parallel and provide both the necessary push and pull factors to ensure that products are progressively made more sustainable. Now, onto the rules that have been adopted in 2019 under the so-called eco-design package. The package of measures that was adopted entailed specific rules for 11 product categories that you can see in the listed below, from lighting equipment to televisions to larger domestic appliances such as washing machines and fridges. A number of those, so the ones that you see circled in the slide, contained first ever repair related requirements, where the intention was not only to address the energy efficiency or water use, let's say, but also to look at how can the impacts on the environment of these products be reduced by extending their lifetime and through the tackling of repairability of these devices and products. These rules were adopted, as I said, in 2019, but entered into force for the most part on the 1st of March this year. And they were linked to a number of new or rescaled EU energy labels that have also come into force at the same time. The regulations, I should perhaps mention, the regulations on servers and welding equipment, which are circled in a different color, have entered into force a little bit before the rest of the product categories. Now, what exactly do these regulations say about repair? There are notably 3 aspects that are tackled in them, which relate to the way the products are designed, the availability of spare parts, and then availability of repair information. So first of all the different product regulations that I've mentioned earlier contain specific lists of key parts that are defined individually for each product and that need to be made easy to disassemble using commonly available tools. The idea there being that for specific key parts that then very often that are known to fail frequently in these products, there is an easy way to replace them by a professional repairer or an end user. There are also specific requirements for the availability of spare parts with specific regulations, including an obligation for manufacturers to provide spare parts, which are very much linked to the parts that are meant to be easy to disassemble, for the number of 7 to 10 years, depending on the product. The regulations specify that the procedure to order these parts must be introduced in maximum 2 years after the product is placed on the market. And these parts need to be delivered to the professional repairer or the end user within the maximum of 15 working days. There are also specific requirements on repair information that needs to be provided to professional repairers. And the categories of information that are covered include disassembly maps, wiring and connection diagrams, lists of necessary repair and test equipment, and so on, which are all outlined in the specific regulations. And again, this information needs to be provided for a specific period of time, which is linked to the period of time for which spare parts need to be provided. The obligation to provide this repair information starts 2 years after the product is placed on the market, and it must be provided either for free or for a reasonable and proportionate fee within 1 working day. Now, even though this, of course, represents a big cornerstone for the right to repair becoming a reality in Europe, it is a little too early to speak about it actually having brought right to repair to Europe, and that for a large number of reasons. The first and obvious one is, of course, that the regulations that have been adopted don't apply to all products that are known to break too early, but only to a selected number of products. The categories that I've mentioned don't cover even all, larger house electricals, with, for example, such products as vacuum cleaners not being included. And also another important limitation, of course, is that requirements for spare parts and repair information do not target end users in many parts, but only professional repairers. And in many cases, that presents a serious obstacle to the amount of devices that will get repaired at the end of the day. Another limitation is that there is this 2-year delay that I've mentioned in accessing repair information and spare parts after the product is placed on the market. And the fact that the obligation to provide spare parts is at the moment required to be delivered within 3 weeks, which also in many cases might present an important obstacle, knowing that the time that it takes for a product to be repaired is very often a key determinant on whether a consumer chooses to repair or to replace a product. There are also a few aspects that are not tackled in the adopted requirements, which are, however, known to be key in consumers making the decision on whether to purchase a new device or to repair. One of them, and an obvious one, is price of spare parts. At the moment, the regulations do not tackle this, and there's very little that has been done in this area to tackle a specific spare part pricing. And there's also very limited that has been adopted in relation to software updates, which for specific products can be a direct life limiting factor. So while the regulations for servers and data storage products, as well as those for electronic displays and televisions, contain some specific requirements to provide latest available firmware and security updates for a set number of years that is linked to the provision of spare parts. That, however, is insufficient to ensure that software updates will be provided for the entire lifetime of a given product. Now, what exactly can we expect in the near future? There's, all these rules that I've mentioned are a great first step, but that's not where the EU intends to stop. And there are a number of major plans in the pipeline that have also been reported on in the media. And the fact that the right to repair is recognized as an increasing priority is evident from the fact that it is enshrined quite prominently in the EU's flagship initiatives, such as its EU Green Deal and Circular Economy Action Plan. I'd like to highlight 4 specific initiatives that are planned in the coming year or so. The first one relates to the electronics in particular, and there's an initiative that is planned to be presented by the end of the year, which will introduce new specific eco-design requirements for the categories of products that for computers, smartphones, tablets, and if no specific agreement is reached by printer manufacturers, also for printers. These requirements are already quite mature and have been in discussion for some time, and we could expect here to have them come into force around 2023. There's also a separate proposal for batteries regulation, which has been proposed by the European Commission and is currently being discussed by the EU's legislative institutions, that is the Council, which brings together the Member States and the European Parliament, where a specific proposal has been made for a horizontal requirement to ensure that batteries in products are easy to replace by professional repairers and users. Separately, there's a proposal coming up later this year on consumer information, with the European Commission looking on how to improve consumer law in order to ensure that information on commercial guarantees is improved, and specific information on the reparability of products, such as on availability of spare parts, software updates, is provided, and also to ban the practice of planned obsolescence. And last but not least, there is a big flagship initiative planned for the end of the year as well to introduce a sustainable product policy framework, which will review the existing eco-design directive in order to enlarge its scope to not only energy-related products, which has been the scope of the directive to date, but to also cover products such as textiles and construction products, for instance. And as part of this initiative, the Commission is also looking to other ways in which right to repair can be meaningfully introduced. So there are a number of studies ongoing to look at aspects which cannot perhaps be addressed through minimum eco-design requirements, but would require a different type of regulatory intervention. Perhaps last point to note here is that the objectives of the European Commission have received wide support, not only from the European Parliament that has adopted a number of resolutions recently endorsing the introduction of right to repair and specific introduction of specific requirements for a broad range of products, but also by the member states of the European Union. We know that a number of strategies, circular economy strategies, have been adopted nationally, which place quite a lot of importance on this issue, and some have also taken separate steps, which I know will be discussed later on in this webinar, on specifically consumer information, with repairability score being introduced in France and also being under discussion in Spain. So all this to say that there is definitely quite a lot in the pipeline to watch out for. Some requirements are very clear to be presented and come into force really rather soon. And here I'm talking about computers, smartphones, and tablets. And a number of other proposals are to watch out for in the longer future, and which can be much more all-encompassing. And I suppose I'll finish on that note and look forward to a discussion during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Ernestus, for giving us a really good context there. I'm going to rush on now to our second presentation, and this is from Hugues Valori, who's talking today about the peculiar situation in the UK, or particular situation in the UK, and also the opportunities that are going to arise from this new legislation. So please, Hugues, please take it away.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Great. Right. So I'll start straight away by introducing the work that the Restart project at the organization I co-founded and I lead on policy is doing. We have a motto, don't despair, just repair. We've been bringing since 2012 people together in communities to run pop-up repair events. We call them Restart parties, but they're part of a larger global movement of repair cafes and other similar events where frustrated consumers, people bring to volunteers their products that no longer work and try to repair them. By doing this, we actually learn a lot about what are the main barriers to repairing products and how we should advocate for change. We are proudly co-founders of the Right to Repair European campaign alongside ECOS and other organizations. And we campaign on Right to Repair both at European and at UK level, given that we are based in London in the UK. And I'll start exactly with the peculiar UK situation. So the UK, as everyone knows, has left the EU, and the big question is, how will the UK policy framework on eco-design and other product policies change as a result of this? And firstly, the EU regulations continue to apply to products as it stands in Northern Ireland due to the agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. And as a result of that, they continue to be relevant. The UK is currently working on a strategy to be presented to Parliament, from what we understand, by the end of spring, early summer. And there is a study ongoing on energy related products, so all the electrical and electronics products that DEFRA and BASE, the two related ministries, are conducting. And this is meant to help the UK prioritize among potential avenues to expand, potentially do better, in some cases follow, and in some cases diverge from EU policy in this respect. Divergence, it's been noted by various stakeholders, could increase the cost of compliance for importers, retailers, and manufacturers. So we don't expect massive changes in that respect, but there might be some different routes, and certain product categories might not be legislated on in the same way or as it happens in the EU. And there is also the potential for horizontal measures, including to improve reparability, but this is still in early stages of discussion. So what I'm saying at the moment could be a speculation based on draft prioritizations that we've seen as part of the current study that a firm is conducting for BASE and DEFRA in the UK. So it is early stages, and while the UK government has announced bringing the right to repair into the UK as of this summer, referring back to Ernesta's presentation, this was just literally adopting the EU regulations on eco-design that were already in effect in Northern Ireland as a result of the EU adopting them. And in the rest of the UK, so in Great Britain, these are not yet operating at the moment. So we'll have to see. Actually, the UK has had a very important report done by the Environmental Audit Committee of Parliament, highlighting some of the key barriers around electronic waste and the circular economy. and a strong call to action asking the UK government to enshrine right to repair in legislation, among other things, and also to consider other measures such as removing or reducing VAT on repairs. The UK government has responded actually turning down the suggestion to reduce or take out VAT on repairs, unfortunately, from our perspective. And we'll have to see what plans actually come proposed to Parliament in the next few months to see if right to repair, the way campaigners and civil society understand it, will be the kind of right to repair that the UK government pursues. The key opportunities are, therefore, in the UK, potential for horizontal measures going beyond some of the key categories normally addressed by eco-design. Understanding what the extent of alignment or divergence from the work that the EU is doing specifically on eco-design. And there's actually some interesting opportunities for areas in which the UK could lead globally. DCMs has a law proposed, which we expect to see updates on in the next few months, regulating the extent of information that manufacturers of connected and Internet of Things products will have to provide on how long software support will be available for the products at the point of sale. This is very interesting because it doesn't exist in legislation elsewhere, and we expect this could provide a turning point to start legislation in this respect. So it's an important area to keep in mind. Quickly, I wanted to just review from our perspective what are consumers' increasing expectations around repair. The very fact that pre-pandemic, and of course we hope very soon, communities get organized and run community repair activities that are packed with interest and excitement, both from volunteers and participants, show that there's a lot of people actually that would love to extend the lifetime of the products that they already have. And data we collect already shows that a lot of the products that are brought to these events actually are already older than the estimates that manufacturers have about the expected lifetime. For instance, 40% of laptops that are brought to these events are older than 6 years. And that shows that people really want to keep using the products they have for various reasons. And Restart, as part of its visions, sees a number of areas of interest for consumers that could be implemented by manufacturers even without having to wait for a regulatory framework that requires them to do this. And I'll just highlight the fact that people are more and more likely to reject or highlight throwaway products. There's a growing sentiment on refusing products that are simply not repairable, like products that might not have even a replaceable battery. And there is an increasing interest in moving beyond the conversation around recycling to actually look at repair and reuse at all levels as more popular and areas in which manufacturers could show themselves a lead. And we're seeing an increased desire to bring repair everywhere, from schools and sharing skills in communities, and a return to repair as a source of new future green jobs. So these are all factors to keep in mind. And there's strong will from the public, and both at UK level, we see that 75% of people want government to take action to ensure the products are longer lasting. And at the EU level, the Eurobarometer indicates very similar percentage of people in favor of this. As it's been mentioned, we'll see more right to repair. This is just a quick summary of what are the asks from the European Right to Repair campaign that we co-lead. And they're all about not just the way products are designed, but also about making it easier and fairer to access repair, including making it cheaper. So regulations or moves towards assessing the affordability of repair, as well as the level of information available to consumers, are going to be part of future efforts that civil society already is interested in. Finally, I'd like to have a look at one such effort at national level. Why is it that the French Reparability Index is getting so much visibility? Specifically because it does some of the things that other regulations at EU level have not been able to do yet. It focuses just on 5 product categories, but with potential plans to extend it beyond those in the future. It assesses products in 5 key areas: availability of spare parts, ease of disassembly, price of spare parts, repair information of its availability to various stakeholders, and actually software updates, which again is not tackled yet by the European measures so far. It's been introduced as of January this year, and first fines for lack of compliance will only be from January 2022. And we already see strong asks from civil society for more transparency around how manufacturers choose to self-score themselves on each of the sub criteria that help coming up with the final score, which is 1 out of 10. But what we're seeing already is that consumers can start comparing among products, and manufacturers have to admit, for example, whether their products are indeed not so easy to disassemble, and whether the spare parts are available to everyone, for how long, or maybe just to professional repairers and not for that long. Well, we are also seeing some appetite from manufacturers to actually do some steps to increase their own scoring. For example, Samsung has released some initial repair manuals in French, in order to gain additional points. And is this a trend that will continue? We see a lot of interest from the public in this topic and in the press as well, and probably an opportunity for manufacturers to start competing in this area and actually lead to more virtuous aspects of repairability. But the big question is, will this French example lead to other national repair indexes, or to a EU-wide one? Ernesto's mentioned already that in Spain there's some interest on coming up with a similar system, and the EU so far seems quite slow in moving forward to this. In terms of the European Right to Repair campaign, we want to see more ambitious measures in this respect, and we think that the public will join us in pushing for them in the future. I'll stop now and wait to answer questions. Thank you.
Many thanks even to you, Hugo. Now we're going to hear from Robert on electrical safety in repair and reuse and the challenges that are going to be facing manufacturers. Over to you, Robert.
Oh, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Hugo and Ernesto. It's very interesting. Hopefully we can spice things up a little bit. I'm not saying they were boring. They were very good. I've written down some really good, useful notes. But yes, so if we go on to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit more about Esafe. So we've been around 50 years doing appliance repair and recycling, trained 4,000 technicians over 40 years, experienced in the repair sector. Now, can you go back? There we are. It's moving me ahead there. I know you're going to rush me, Claire. But anyway, we've got a lot of products. I don't want to dwell too much on this. I'll talk some more about it later or another time, because you'll get copies of these slides. So I'll try to speak a little bit quicker, try and whiz through this stuff. But here you can see a long number of key points in our history. And interestingly, the last one, we are a new charitable business model. So we're trying to run something that supports local repairers and create local funds through a waste prevention model. with skills in the community. So next slide, thanks. Okay, so electrical safety, why it's important. Consumers actually have a right to know as well as a right to repair about who's repaired their products, I believe. And is it measured in competency? Is it safe to use? How are they assessed independently? And who assesses them, that they know what they're doing? European standards, because it's got to be fit for purpose. So who's monitoring that and how? And that's a dichotomy as well for the UK trading standards. We've met quite a number of them over the last few years, and we're working through that positively, I would say. Product conformity, HGTS will know a lot about that, because if a product's put on the market, how do we know it's the same product when it's repaired? You know, and the test equipment that's being used, is it calibrated? So you need to understand electricity. And I think people need to know that people who have repaired it do understand it, not just for themselves who do the repair, but for the consumers. Fire services, who repaired it, you know, because fire, it's particularly in white goods appliances, but not solely, are caused by faulty equipment, but there are counterfeit products inside them quite often as well. And so it's quite a big challenge for people to know that. So we're trying to bring something to the table for that. You know, so in repair cafes, you know, we support repair cafes and are right to repair, to be honest with you, but we have to look at the safety element and make sure that people do understand what they're doing when they're doing it, as opposed to saying, oh look, I'll have a go. I went down there, I learned that, I'll have a go at home and do this. Where does that product go next after they've done it? You know, is it safe in their house? So there's a lot of issues to think about on safety. Next slide, please. It's out of my control. There we go. So yeah, here's just an example from IFIC, cause of domestic fires. You can see the numbers there. They speak for themselves. I won't need to go through them, but it just stresses the importance of actually making sure a product is meeting the standard that it was placed on the market, still is, you know, safe to use at the end of the day. And that's why we can help the fire services, and we spoke to them quite a lot as well. Next slide is further causes of fires, particularly in the tumble dryer and the washing machine areas. So, you know, do these people know about these areas? So disassembly and assembly isn't the same as diagnostic. And what we're trying to do is teach a community circular economy repairer living in a community who actually does understand this stuff and is taught proper diagnostic skills to do repairs quickly and efficiently and conform to the product standard as it was first put on the market. There's a quote there. Oh, go back there. There's a quote just to mention at the bottom from Electrical Safety First. It's supporting exactly what we're saying there and proving that it's not just white goods that these problems exist. Okay, next slide. So, so you mentioned the Environmental Audit Committee. Here's the words that they wrote to us about after the inquiry was completed. I know Hugues was in there, so it's a good job. But you can see that safety is a critical issue for the government. So whatever they do, certainly the committee's hell-bent, shall I put it into those words, in making sure that there are standards out there that will give more consumer trust. And so we need to encapsulate that in a holistic model, which is what we're busy doing and working on and delivering in some areas. Next slide, please. Hope I'm not going too fast, Claire. So here is a kind of sustainability issue. This is challenges now for the right to repair and the manufacturers. Here's how we're trying to map into a new economic model, which known as donut economics, which Kate Raworth has done a great job on. And you can see the elements on the right-hand side that map into the obvious. You can dissect yourself the areas that are. These are factors that we build into our repair model, but also through our appliance safety register, which is an intervention to get goods to local community people before they leave the community so that they can do safe repairs. Okay, yeah, you moved on there. So things like responsible, back. Things like responsible consumption and the CE, climate change, community ownership. This whole model that we're building is a community ownership model, which is our social arm. Mentioned a little bit about that at the end. But it's important to map true global and local sustainability in repair and reuse. And that is a challenge, I think, for manufacturers and anyone that's in repair. Although a lot of people are doing a great job, it's important that consumers know who they are and know that they're involved in mapping to this new Build Back Better world. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a huge factor in sustainability, really, at the end of the day, because people will create waste. So while you've got the pull and the push there, and as mentioned earlier on, every time you put something new, something is created in waste, and that's a problem in itself, as we can see from the UN figures, that it's a global problem of waste. So we've got to get more repair, absolutely agreed. But you can see here, this is one of the factors that's very important. Look at the cost of supplying and fitting a new motor for a washing machine on this survey from RAP, which was done in 2012. Now, if money has gone up since then maybe it's even more expensive. But that's a comparison for you to look at, and it'll be available in the slides afterwards. Next one, please. And here's another survey from the Which Trusted Traders survey, who are just only trusted by feedback. There's no identified standard behind them that these people are fitting the right products, possibly fitting substandard components, substandard materials that are not compliant with the RoHS directive, so the materials and the products that they're made from, and therefore may not make the product safe. But once again, you can see the kind of quotes there. So by creating circular economy repairers living in the community, the local proximity principle is in place here, because you would expect these figures to come down quite a lot if you're living in your neighbourhood and you're able to pop around and do repairs on white goods. But not just that, you could then do all the other elements as well safely and get yourself registered with Esafe as a repair. Next slide. And again, yeah, you mentioned some phones. So a lot of these products, you know, here's a comparison and the costs of different models, but phones are something I think that first came out of right to repair, very, very core to the Apple sector, but they're far too expensive, but they're disappearing from our communities, and the big boys are taking them away. So our community arm model to this repair side is where we're trying to then divert these goods to people who have the product knowledge and the safety covered by registering with us, so that they can conduct repairs and sell these goods local, which generates a much bigger and better local income, as well as prevents more waste and stops it going to the corporate models that actually own all of this stuff at the end of the day, because we need to live differently. So our challenge is to live differently and do it through waste prevention and repair. Next slide. So a few key questions to some of the stakeholders in the electrical repair and reuse sector. The manufacturers, they've got conflicting appliance safety register. We were the first to have an independent safety register, but they're selling new and not selling used. And they don't support local reuse and recycled spares, which we are attempting to do that through a quality assurance system. Trading standards, buy with confidence. So I mentioned trading standards earlier on. They have got they've got a £250 a year fee you can pay, and you will be stamped by trading standards. But in terms of electrical repairs, they still have no trusted person or registered repairer to back it up. So you really can't buy with confidence if the factors that I've already mentioned are not actually checked. And that's where we're trying to come in. And again, we're working with them. And if you look at the counterfeit models there, look how much money is spent fighting organised crime. So there's a false economy here. We can get repair right and get conformity right, then we can save a lot of money and be good partners with the government and consumers, who can then have safer products. I won't go through them all because I know we're running out of time, but the Senelec standards on there as well. You know, that the EN 4554 isn't really a measure of any competence in the reparation, and it doesn't actually have safety and conformity in there. So there's a lot to do there, and we'd be happy to work with these groups more and more. Same with the BSI. I meet BSI quite a few times, and they recognise why we're different. They run a protocol. We run a repair qualification or certification, which independently assesses the competence of the people and or the knowledge on the electricity. So we do an Ohm's law assessment of people as well, so you can get registered with us. So I won't mention them all there. So we're going to go next slide because I've got some time restraints to get questions in. Okay, next slide. So basically, this is the solution side, what we're bringing to the market, and the green jobs research has been done by RAP proves that there are 290 more jobs per 10,000 tonnes of waste diverted from landfill when it goes to repair and reuse, which is great. But we want those jobs in the community. We don't want them in some factory far away where all the goods disappear to. We want them local so that people can make a living and support repair cafes, and not just have volunteers in there, but perhaps volunteers who have actually been Esafe registered. So that would be really good. And perhaps promote them to do local stuff elsewhere and train to do white goods. So we're setting up training centres. Well, we've got a pilot that we want to run, and we're looking for another community to pilot another Esafe training centre. So we have licensed training materials to help with that and help it delivered on a wholesale basis at a local level. Next slide. I'm watching my clock. And so some of what we can achieve together, again, I won't read them all out, but you can see there in the red bits there what we're doing. They're quite key areas. Regional training centres I mentioned, we've got these manuals that belong to us. We're going to license them out to let other centres train other people so we can get a huge base of local repairers working to safer standards. Ours links to a social value, not like the European standard, and a local community currency, and it raises funds. We're raising funds locally in a community model, which is linked to the training, linked to the register, and then linked back into the community. So next slide, watching the time again. So this is our last slide, really. So we've got some links there, which when you get a copy of the presentation, you'll be able to link and have a little look at it. But that's an encapsulation, basically, of our model with the appliance safety register, our online marketplace called Locality, Claire. So the E is about employment, education, and environment at a local basis. And you should see the training centres that are linked in there. And that's a picture of our app that we're developing, so that people can prove who they are locally, when they live locally, and show what they're doing to prevent waste on all aspects and create a local currency to help tackle poverty and administer the funds. And so it's really interesting that it's another subject for another day, but it's a new award-winning model. Esafe won an award in 2015, beating a lot of companies with 100 plus employees, and there was only just 2 of us at the time doing that model. So that's my slideshow complete. Hopefully, Claire, that helps you catch up a little bit.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, you've all got such interesting things to say. It's very difficult, isn't it, to get it all in, but I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Robert. We're going to hear from Damian now, and then we will take maybe a question or two at the end. We may go a little bit over 11 o'clock. I hope everybody can bear with us. I've heard Damian speak before, and he's very good. He's definitely worth hanging on for. So let's talk to you now, Damian. Supply chain, and how to see this legislation as an opportunity and not a burden. So off you go.
Yes, thank you, Claire. It's very kind of you to say you've listened to me speak before. Most people then just switch off and kind of eyes closed, but I'll try and keep it light and brief as well. I think it's symptomatic, isn't it, of the fact that this is a very complex issue, and that's perhaps, you know, why we've run over time. It's incredibly detailed to try and deal with. And thank you to my other panelists as well, who've given us some really good deep dive insight. My focus today really is to talk about the right to repair legislation and how it kind of talks about a wider opportunity. I think for a lot of people, they will perhaps see another piece of regulation as just a burden, a cost to their business. But actually, I've worked in supply chain now for over 8 years. EcoDesk has around 13,000 suppliers registered on its platform. And we work day in and day out with those suppliers to understand sustainability within their processes and within their products. So there were kind of 4 key areas I wanted to focus on today, which was the challenges in the supply chain, the normalizing aspect of this as well. Regulation is very good, compliance is very good, but actually what it tends to do is not necessarily embed some kind of normalizing process within organizations. Again, looking at how we avoid thinking about this as a burden and perhaps moving beyond to compliance. One of the key points I would make is that the compliance is very binary. You either are compliant or you're not compliant. What it doesn't really tell end users, the consumers and the brands themselves is whether there are degrees of performance. And it's that performance piece that I wanted to focus on a little bit further. And then also about long-term value creation. You know, we're talking about circularity today. So if I was to circle back to the origins of this presentation, it's really about delivering long-term value. Sustainability, after all, is about efficiency. I won't bore you with Newton's second law of thermodynamics. We probably haven't got time for that. but it does talk about entropy, and sustainability is absolutely about efficiency. So to me, the compliance is fantastic news, but it's also about performance. Thank you. Next slide. So the supply chain challenges, multifarious. I think there are kind of 4 key points there, really. As a brand, someone who's then manufacturing these white goods and then moving them on to consumers, it is necessary part of to kind of keep monitoring, reporting, and to embed continuous improvement strategies. A lot of what's happening here is that we're having politicians come in and regulators come in, and they're pushing on to manufacturers of these white goods to actually disclose what's going on in the supply chain. It's a very hard piece of work to do, but as I say, we've been doing it for around 8 years. It can be tackled. What's really important is thinking about suppliers, establishing monitoring, reporting, and CI strategies moving forward. I personally see the regulations as a strategic advantage, and it's not often talked about. It's really just, well, I need to comply with this, but actually used properly and leveraged correctly, this is a huge strategic advantage for a lot of suppliers. I appreciate that there are lots of challenges. The products are repaired may not necessarily meet OEM specification, and that is something that we've got to think about as we move forward. I think that's more on the kind of repair side of things, obviously. And then brand reputation. A lot of people that I've spoken to seem to think that this could, brands could be adversely affected. But again, done correctly, this leads to enhanced brand reputation. So provided that safety is observed and compliance is recognized and dealt with, then I think they're going to, again, there's a huge opportunity. I've been working in this space for far too long now. But I remember the example of Xerox, which I'll just share with everyone on the call. Xerox were actually pioneers when it came to circular economy. They were talking about circular economy, but not using the phrase circular economy back in the 1990s. And what they did was they actually switched from a build, buy, dispose linear model to a circular model, where they started leasing a lot of their photocopiers they began with. And actually what they decided to do was to take the frame of a product and disassemble that, and then look at all the various components. Now, of course, that will be familiar to a lot of people listening in today, but it does show that actually this kind of thinking has been around for a long, long time. It actually became more profitable as a result of adopting a circular economy model, where they were a model where they were leasing their products to their users. Just one to think about. We might need to skip through all of my slides, I think, because there's quite a few here, Claire. So if we just rattle through them super quick. Next slide, please. Who has got the? Thank you. So normalizing, just a very quick word on normalizing. I really love this diagram, by the way, from Iberdrola. It just talks about the benefits of eco-design, or design for environment, as it was first known. Look, it is weird. It's a bit of an anathema to a lot of companies. But normalizing really starts with small steps. So what we've done is developed improvement plans with suppliers, and they're not huge, they're not onerous. It's not like an encyclopedia. These things can actually be very small, very staged, phased steps. So I would encourage all suppliers really to just think about how they could phase in design for environment principles. And I always encourage suppliers to think about their own management proficiencies and capabilities. Because a lot of sustainability is very emotive, but actually we need to get down to how this is dealt with on a very practical level. Thank you. Next slide. I feel like Jonathan Van Tam. So moving beyond compliance, like I said, compliance is very binary for most people. It's either compliant or not compliant, but it doesn't necessarily mean better or worse. It's very hard for people to understand what is a better supplier or producer, or who is a worse supplier. So I would always encourage people to think beyond compliance. Do the compliance piece, that's necessary. Clearly, we don't want to be encouraging fines or even worse, kind of litigation. But that will buy a lot of loyalty and longevity in products. Closing the value action gap. Sustainability is often talked about as being something that we should all be doing, and we should be doing very well. So we all value, I think, what sustainability is about. But when it comes to the actions of sustainability, it's very difficult to then bridge that gap. So what tends to happen is we get very much a top-down approach, or we've seen through supply chains a very top-down approach. It's actually the suppliers where the most action can occur, where we get as much juice from the squeeze, I think, is the colloquial term for this. I would also just point out litigation as well. I work, as I say, within the supply chain and ESG sphere. The number of litigations, not just for breaches of compliance, but also from civil society and other actors, shareholder activists on organisations is increasing and set to increase dramatically. So I do see this as a preemptive piece as much as anything else. Thank you. Next slide. And finally, long-term value creation. For me, this is absolutely critical because this is ultimately what sustainability is all about. I love that quote. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So to me, this sings to creating better products for the future, but also creating better processes. I think if we can focus, as I say, not just on the compliance, but also on the performance aspect of this, then we can genuinely create long-term, better long-term value, which can only be good for planet and people. I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it is, yeah, you guys are so great to rush through that there. And I appreciate that, Damian. And it's really, you were talking about, I suppose, the sexy side of all of this, because instead of getting like, oh no, regulations, changes, nightmares for manufacturers, it's looking at it as this amazing change really, and where we can go with it. And it's so interesting what you were talking about there about how other people did start doing this, but we went into it then, and now we really are. Brilliant. Well, look, I've got a couple of questions, but one thing I perhaps wanted to ask you to give HQTS a chance to, but they're not going to answer, but maybe one of you guys can. It's about I wanted to find out how the third party people like HQTS or anyone else out there help people comply with this and ensure the product quality and that it does all the things it's meant to be doing. And I'm not sure who might want to answer that one. Maybe you, Robert, is that the baby one you could ask?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's down to having that information that the person repairing, as I said before, does know what they're doing and has committed to staying with the OEM specifications, as Damian was saying in his presentation. And I think consumers do want more repair, but as I say, they do want to know who's repaired it. Was it just Joe Bloggs around the corner who's used substandard components and done a quick botch job? I mean, I ran a charity for 10 years, and we had a 14,000 square foot warehouse, 3 charity shops, and 3 vans collecting everything. So I saw at the coalface, how people needed goods. And we saw some stuff come in that was very obviously just a botched job, and if that had been passed on to somebody else, then there were risks to the consumers. I think that's part and parcel, and it's a space that we're looking to try and fill and work cohesively with other people such as you've had here today.
If I could just make a quick comment on that, perhaps.
Yeah, yes,
the role for me on companies like HQTS is absolutely vital. I think what I've experienced over the past decade or so is an absolute lack of transparency and a lack of assurance and a lack of auditing. So there is a vital role for making sure that actually compliance isn't just simply about the box ticking. Compliance is actually about making sure that actually happened, and it's very much about kind of affirming and building trust. So look, it's a critical role that ultimately ends up with a much better product for the end consumer.
I would add, if I may, Claire.
Yeah, please.
What we see as trend of the desire for more transparency, definitely from consumers, and there is an opportunity to go beyond for manufacturers and for third parties that work with them to actually not just audit things so that, as Damian was saying, it's a binary yes, no, but go beyond and help regain some consumers' confidence in your products. And for example, when we look at the French reparability score, it's encouraging to see that manufacturers are adopting it. Well, I mean, obviously they will have to adopt it in France, but there is an opportunity to go beyond and actually be more transparent about what are the sources of all the claims you're making. I think like a manufacturer that would go that route would actually gain extra points in the public's eye and set a standard higher for everyone to follow.
I see you nodding there, Anastas.
Absolutely, I can only agree with what Hugo said and second that. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, we're almost out of time. Oh, sorry, Robert. Sorry, what did you want to say?
Just one little thing, because I mean, you spoke about professional repairers, and having met the Manufacturers Association a few times, they've seen our model and we think it's really, they called it genius, but getting everybody involved. But we support that branding manufacturer support in our model. We can do that and give people a qualification, because professional repairers, they've said, is qualifications. So this, if we can move on that area, then consumers and everybody else involved in this can see what we can do and capture a history on repairs. Was it professional? Was it not? You know, because you'd only get shown there in an online marketplace that we're producing, and so belonging to the community. So brand specialists can live inside the housing estates where they are, if they're registered with us. So that would give the brands and the manufacturers a lot of ways of getting their products repaired safely and much more cost effectively and better to the environment, rather than somebody running around in a van all the time, polluting the atmosphere, etc., etc. So we've got a model that kind of does all that as well. That's what we're trying to introduce. So I agree with all what's said, but we're also giving a route to that market, and it'd be great to talk further with the guys here.
It is interesting how the industry is changing, and the whole attitude towards consumers will change as a result. And I mean, we know that, we see that throughout loads of industries, changing how the consumers become so important in their viewpoint, and their changing attitudes. So thank you for sharing that one, Robert. It was a different element. And yeah, all of these things are great points to go into, but we have run out of time, which is such a shame, because I would love to get some more questions in. But anybody does have any questions, please do send them into HQTS. This recording will be made available as well. And obviously HQTS is going to be creating more webinars. But thank you so much today to Ernestus, Hugo, Robert and Damian for taking part. And you can watch our previous webinars and this one on YouTube as well. So just keep in touch with HQTS. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Goodbye.
Okay, goodbye. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.